Assalamu alaikum. So the unthinkable happened. We now have 5 minutes for Q&A. So the first question was asked, how do you guys practice sabr when facing Islamophobia?
I have to put my other hat on, which is also religious education. وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And seek refuge in patience and prayer. So one way for you to practice patience in facing Islamophobia is to seek protection with prayer, because the prayer is the guard for the believer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you wherever you are. So part of patience is not to think that you are alone. We don't have a Superman complex or thinking that you're going to do it alone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you wherever you are. You just have to understand that you have to do the effort, and with Allah is the success, and to take with the asbab, meaning that to take the causalities to protect yourself and those around you. Now, if I want to shift a little bit for a minute, if you allow me, I want people to download the Islamophobia reporting app. So Islamophobia, it's a blue app. This is for us to get data. Data drives policy. When Ilhan Omar put the resolution on having an international monitor for Islamophobia, we sent her our survey, and she used one of the key pieces of the survey where we surveyed 1,600 Muslims, and 80% of them said that Islamophobia is not taken seriously. So that was an important piece in the discussion for legislation on Islamophobia. So I want you, if you experience any type of Islamophobia, to report it, and we issue a monthly data of what type of Islamophobia, whether it's verbal, somebody pulled on your hijab, somebody called you Osama even though your name is not Osama, somebody is mentioning what is your backpack is about. All these are Islamophobic incidents. And then there are violent Islamophobia. I know in employment there's a lot of Islamophobia, where some manager insisted that on the weekly staff meeting just brings in a pork type of food, even though knowing that some of his staff is actually Muslim. So these are signs or elements that we need to be aware of. So reporting, data drives policy. I know that I have a feeling that I face Islamophobia. I appreciate your feeling, but I can't do much with it without data. So I want your data in order to drive policy.
So if I can give a couple of practical tips for folks. The reality is you're going to face Islamophobia, and it sucks, right? Nobody wants anybody to make fun of you, to mock you, especially when it comes to your faith. And I know particularly for young Muslims in spaces where they're not the majority or have, cultural dominance in that they are the norm, it's tough. So I can't speak to where most of folks live, but I grew up in a community that was largely Muslim. So Muslims were enacting Islamophobia on each other. It was quite a remarkable thing. But for those of you who may live in communities that you don't have that type of engagement, I would say try to find consistent people in your own community that you can go to find comfort, particularly Muslims. Now, I have a lot of friends that are not Muslim. In fact, if I had to guess, most of them are not Muslim. But I know that when things in politics gets tough, and I can tell you I'm going to be the only Muslim in January serving in the Michigan House, and my staffer is the only hijabi out of thousands of people working in our state capitol. So I know the feeling of isolation. But the only way to really combat that is recognize that you might be in a situation where there are folks that'll give you subtle Islamophobia, that'll be insulting in some ways. But recognize, to Professor Hatim's point, that sabr is incredibly important, and it's a prophetic tradition. Reading the story of our Prophet, our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will really give you insight on how much triumph he went through. Islam is not meant to be a cakewalk. Ala inna salatullahi ghaliya. The commodity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expensive. And you don't get expensive stuff by being cheap, right? So if you think that you're not going to face struggles in this country, then that is a problem that you really have to level set and say, you know what? I will face the unfortunate reality of Islamophobia. And you look to the tradition of Black America. For 500 years, they have sustained through white supremacy. And they continue to sustain, and they are the bedrock of Islam in the United States. Most of you sitting in the audience are immigrants or children of immigrants. You would not be here had it not been for the Nation of Islam and the United States' intentional effort to lift quotas in countries like in South Asia and the Middle East to offset the political and social power that the nation was building. So we have to recognize that as a reality. You want to learn how to face and have sabr in Islamophobia? Study the legacy of Black America. Study the legacy of those. And if you haven't read the autobiography of Malcolm X, raise your hand if you have not read it. All right, there's too many hands out there. There shouldn't have been a single hand up. Go home tonight and buy the book on, you don't want to go on Amazon. There's a great bookstore called Powell's in South Chicago, right by the University of Chicago. Go buy that book. It's $4, $5. Take that book home and read the autobiography of Malcolm X, because wallahi, that will give you such incredible insight on the life and the legacy of a Black Muslim who faced the odds of being otherized. You know, he grew up in Lansing, in the state capital that I serve in. And I remember in one of the stories, he tells you that, I'm so sorry, Imam, aside, but in one of the stories, he tells you that his teacher told him, you're nothing but an N-word, that you're not going to go anywhere, you'll never learn how to read and write. Imagine if you're an 8-year-old kid and you're told that, right? They use the hard R, they use the word boy. And despite that, he has been one of the biggest cultural icons in Black America in the world. So think about that as you think about your sabr, and recognize the legacy of those who have struggled before us.
Jazakumullahu khairan to our esteemed speakers. Inshallah, this marks the end. If you have unanswered questions, which many of you do, our speakers are